We are told that bacteria, parasites, and virus are responsible for disease. What if I told you that they aren't, and the only thing responsible for disease is man-made toxins? Bacteria, virus, and parasites are responsible for removing degenerative tissue and toxins from the body. They are not responsible for actual disease. Disease is man-made, not created by God or nature.
Let's say I go out and kill a goat and he rots in the field. We have worms that'll show up, we have vultures that'll show up, and we have crows that'll show up. The crows and the vultures are not indigenous to the tissue of that animal, but they will come and eat it. But do you blame the crows and the vultures for the dead carcass? No. That's why you can't blame the E. coli and the salmonella and the trichinosis for the dead carcass. They just feed on it. It is their job to generate tissue that is in degeneration.
But that's not my question. My question is, after you feed at 300 degrees for X minutes, where does any life appear from in it?
It could appear from extraneously.
Just extraneously.
Yeah, it could be introduced.
Like
yes.
fruit flies that just come out of nothing. Kind of.
Well, fruit flies are, from what I understand of fruit flies, they spontaneously are part of fruit for some reason, because you can hermetically seal that and have the fruit contained in an isolation chamber and never ever exposed to any insects, and all of a sudden the fruit flies will appear.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so that to me is like the worms and the parasites. They are natural and indigenous to fruit tissue, like the parasites and bacteria are indigenous to animal tissue. But the crows and the vultures aren't, but they'll come and feed on it, animal tissue. Yes?
There are myths going around that raw meat will make you sick because of bacteria, and this is why people cook their food, to destroy the bacteria which is allegedly harmful. This is false, and I will debunk this myth in this video. In fact, bacteria in cooked food is more harmful because it is mutated, and cooked food is what causes food poisoning, not raw food. From page 96 in We Want to Live by Augenis van der Planets, quote, "The bacterial count in cooked meat and eggs will grow 60 times higher than in raw meat and eggs, before it produces a putrid odor. The waste produced by bacteria feeding on cooked food is extremely toxic. That's why bacterial food poisoning in this country is from cooked, packaged, or restaurant food. I could not find one laboratory test that proved bacteria living on raw meat caused food poisoning in animals who ate it."
Anything that's cooked is going to get disease. Take those cats that were grown on the cooked foods in the Pottinger experiments. 10 years, 900 cats. All those that ate cooked foods had disease. The bacteria will get disease too if it's feeding on it. Its byproducts will be a lot more toxic. So people can get food poisoning, but it's always from pasteurized food. Take a look in the recipe book. The back chapter, it talks about all of the incidents of known so-called bacterial food poisoning came from pasteurized dairy, not raw. One incident involved 197,000 people.
So you're saying I got sick, and I got violently sick, and I really wanted to die. It was that sick for 2 days or so. And that was because it was a cooked egg?
No, I don't. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the likelihood, if you've got an old cooked egg that's been sitting around and the bacteria is fed on it, and its byproducts, its verotoxins are 10 to 100 times worse. Normally they're easily discarded and they're even beneficial. But when it's fed on cooked foods, it becomes a contaminant, a poison. Now, most people just are building up with these toxic substances from cooking. And it builds up, and they go into diarrhea and vomit. That's why on this diet, it reduces to 12% instead of 18 to 20%. This diet doesn't create more toxicity, but it helps you get rid of toxicity.
Augenis van der Planets even did an experiment feeding animals parasite-infested raw meat, and none of the animals tested positive for parasites. The idea that you can get parasites from eating raw meat is another myth. The larvae from parasites live inside of our tissues and are used when we become overabundant with degenerative tissue, and they come out to get rid of it for us.
Meat to see if it transferred into humans.
None, anywhere. So I put a laboratory test together. I started, started acting on General Hospital, and Santa Barbara started making a lot of money again. And also painting, I would make, anywhere from 100 to 125 an hour, doing murals and paintings in very wealthy people's homes. So I had enough money to do these laboratory tests. So I spent a lot of years spending a lot of money on laboratory tests. So one of them was I took these animals who were very weak and very old that had tested for no parasites. Fed them the parasite-infested calf's brain, chicken tripe with pinworms going crazy in them, like I ate with the salmon, and what was the other one? Oh, liver worms and heartworms. So all of these animals ate it raw, including me. Blood test for 10 weeks, urine, now the feces checked, not one parasite. This is all supposition. This is fiction. It is myth that bacteria in raw meat causes disease. Absolute myth. And I have to think back and think, how did man live? Because he didn't cook his food. If you live outdoors, making a fire is a huge, tremendous chore. And the Native American Indians and all those tribes said that they eat most of their meat raw. Only on certain celebrations did they cook it. And they always cooked it when a white man was around, because the white man prevented them from eating raw meat and having their ceremonies on the reservations. And they also got to the point where they didn't want the white man to know their secrets of health. So they wouldn't tell them about the raw meat. They wouldn't eat raw meat in front of them. Of course, the Eskimos were so remote, and they weren't slaughtered like the Southern American Indians, the southern northern continent Indians, like in America and Mexico. So they still ate raw meat all the time in front of the white man. So here we have this whole myth that is causing people probably to be very deficient in lots of proteins, amino acids, and B vitamins, even calcium. Vitamin C, you can assimilate more vitamin C in a pound of meat than you can in 5 oranges. In fact, the only food that has been proved to reverse scurvy in 1.5 days is raw meat. And those are in the annals of Dartmouth University under Vladimir Stephenson's research when he was living with the Eskimo. And there was a sea captain who got scurvy, and the only thing that was available was raw meat. Scurvy was gone in 1.5 days. So all this stuff is documented, but certainly doesn't get out there to the public.
There are a lot of myths going around about viruses and colds. You want a cold. A cold is a detoxification. The cold is primarily bacteria, the flu is viral. When you become so toxic that the bacteria cannot remove the toxins from your body without being killed by the cell, then viruses are manufactured by your cells to clean the cell so there is no damage to the DNA. Viruses are not transmutable, alive, or airborne. Viruses do not have a nucleus, respiratory system, digestive system, so how can they be alive?
Virus. Again, viruses are not alive, they're just solvents that dissolve matter. And if you're using a solvent, like if you're cleaning your driveway of grease, you have a water base with a solvent. And what happens, you wipe it up and then it gets into the bucket, and you have this bucket of all this water, maybe 2.5 to 3 gallons of water, and it's all contaminated. So it's a lot to cleanse and flush out of the system. If your body's using bacteria or parasites, they consume the degenerative tissue and they put out a fraction of it as an excrement. So let's say like a parasite can eat 100 times its weight in 24 hours and have 1% feces. That's like us eating 100 pounds and having a 1 pound feces the next day. That's I don't have to handle 100 pounds, I only have to handle a pound. That's the way the body works. And if it's a bacteria, they can do about 50 times their weight in 24 hours and have about a 5% secretion, sometimes up to 8. So they even reduce it. We will eat 14 pounds and have a pound, excrement the next day, a whole pound excrement. So it's much better to have bacteria and parasites rather than virus. So this is the first bacterial cold that I've had in 3 years. I pray for them, because it's so much cleaner. There are less symptoms. It can even be asymptomatic except for the mucus flow. Of course, it's partially in my brain, so if I cough, the brain hurts when I rattle it. So
if you get a cold, it means your body is...
detoxified.
So there's no such a thing as too many colds? Because I went through 3 of that in the last few months.
No, that's wonderful. That means your body's dumping wonderfully. There's a team of doctors that I lectured to about 22 years ago at Yale who were involved in a study that found that 80% of cancer reverses immediately following a cold or a flu. 80% of the cases of cancer reversing immediately followed a cold or a flu.
The bird flu is a hoax. We cannot transmit a virus from another animal. The only way you can get a bird virus is by injection. Human viruses are manufactured by your cells to remove toxins too heavy for bacteria or parasites to handle. It's that simple, and there's nothing to fear about viruses. Just keep your body free from toxins by avoiding processed and cooked foods, living in a clean, pollution-free environment, and the body will not need to manufacture viruses to clean the body. This world wasn't created for us to be constantly fearful of these microscopic things in the world. It's illogical and irrational. Don't fall for the fear-mongering or myths about disease. They are meant to make you fearful and control you. Think for yourself and learn these things for yourself. Use your God-given logical mind to discern the truth. There is a common idea that has been pushed by mainstream science for over 100 years now, and it's called germ theory. This idea is that disease comes from germs, rather than from your environment or from pollution. The competing theory to germ theory is called terrain theory. Antoine Béchamp was an outspoken proponent of terrain theory. The idea that disease comes from a polluted terrain, your environment, or in other words, from chemicals and pollution in your air, water, food, and medication. Terrain theory on its face just seems much more logical to me than God created a planet with tiny little viruses flying around everywhere, trying to kill everyone, or bacteria lurking on every countertop, surface, and water drop waiting to poison you. That just doesn't make sense. Why would a creator design a planet like that? It seems like a terrible design, and therefore the theory doesn't make sense to me, and many people besides myself. There have been many opponents to germ theory over the last century since its initial launch into mainstream education, but they have been largely hidden from the media as most truth is today. Flus are not contagious, they are a seasonal detoxification of the body. Do you ever wonder why everyone gets the flu at the same time every year? It's not because we get it from one another, it's because it's the season our bodies tend to cleanse the body out most often. Right after winter, when we are cooped up indoors without much sunshine to boost the immune system and keep us at our peak health and clean the toxins from our environment. The idea that flu viruses are contagious is a total illusion, like most things in this world are. Once you start waking up to the truth of your physical world, you realize that most, if not all of this, is an illusion, including the idea of contagious disease.
And when you have no bacteria and no fungus or no parasites to do that, your body uses virus. And viruses are not alive. They have no respiratory system. They have no nucleus.
Why is it contagious? Why?
It isn't contagious.
Okay, why the kids at the school and everybody's all of a sudden got coughing and there's 9,000 kids that are sick? You know what I'm saying? They say the flu.
Because it's seasonal.
Seasonal. And how is one catching it from the other
You're not
person?
catching it.
You're not catching it.
It's seasonal. You're gonna. That's like saying bears are contagious. You know, the bears come out of hibernation, let's say in Colorado first, and then they move up to Iowa, and then Dakotas, Wyoming, and then it goes into Canada and up to Alaska. That's like saying bears are contagious. Seasonal. They go into hibernation, they come out of hibernation.
So it's like
Seasonal. Exactly. Sometimes
So they
somebody.
don't catch it specifically from another child.
they're eliminating it.
They,
Pardon?
They're eliminating it.
They're eliminating.
Whatever they have when they get sick, it's just elimination.
Yeah, it's eliminating whatever the virus is broken down.
That's all.
Remember the bird flu scare? When the media had everyone scared they were going to get a deadly virus from a bird. What a ridiculous idea. You can't get viruses from other people, and especially not from other animals. This is not how the world and our bodies were designed. Viruses are dead proteins, not alive and without respiratory or circulatory systems, or a nucleus. Birds have viruses from eating diseased bugs that are full of pesticides, and their bodies produce viruses to remove the pesticides from their system.
Okay, Joe?
I've been hearing these bird pandemic advertisements like crazy last week, every day, 4 or 5 times on the radio.
Well, you have to understand, they've got this swine flu vaccine already now. So they want to scare as many people into taking these vaccines as
Oh,
possible.
it's a very scary way they talk. Too.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Very serious.
And let me
very
tell you, there's no pandemic. All birds have viruses today because of all the pesticides we have, all the diseased bugs that they eat. So they can't use parasites and bacteria to cleanse themselves anymore. They have to use viruses.
Have you ever wondered how mainstream science keeps coming up with these concepts that viruses replicate? Well, what happens in a petri dish does not correlate with what happens in a human body. The petri dish is sterile, unlike the human body. So those cells in the petri dish become contaminated in that fertilized environment without any bacteria as a shield, and they start producing virus.
Whenever you put live cells in a petri dish, remember it's sterile. It's not like in the human body, even though our blood is considered sterile. There's bacteria and everything in there, but they consider it non-active when it's in the bloodstream. However, when you put it in a petri dish, it is not like in the human body. So those cells start getting contaminated by that fertilized environment, and they start making viruses to clean themselves. So that's why the growing or the production of virus is so high in a petri dish.
There have been many studies that have tried to transmit virus from one person to the other, and they have failed every time. There has never been a controlled study done on 2 populations where one was vaccinated and one wasn't, and then measured for virus after. You would think with all the vaccines being pushed, they would do a study like this, but there never has. They are basing their virus on a theory, never anything that has actually been proven. It is all an illusion, and much of the world is falling for it. Fear is the currency of the media. They want you to be scared. If you pay attention, all the news stories are based on keeping you scared, full of fear, doubt, and worry. This is all evil and a way to control you. Never be scared of anything, it's a scam. Never believe anything from mainstream media, for they are a corporation trying to make money on you from advertisers. They don't make money telling you the truth. The truth comes for free if you pay attention and just listen to your intuitions. They don't want you to know this because nobody will keep watching their channels anymore if everyone finds out God gave you the truth for free written in your heart. Once you clean your body and mind out from standard processed food and get on a natural diet, the truth will become revealed to you more clear than you could ever imagine. The health of your soul depends to a certain extent on the health of your body, because the body houses the soul. Clean your diet, clean your mind, free your soul, and connect yourself to the source, directly to all of the truth and information, and nobody can control you, manipulate you, or sell you lies anymore. Think for yourself. Never have an expert, guru, or teacher think for you. The real teachers will show you the truth is inside you and cannot be found in a book or from anyone else. Disease is a major problem today, and we have to understand how these things work in order to bring peace to ourselves. Who doesn't want peace? Without peace, we cannot have love, and without love, suffering will have no end. Thanks for watching, everyone.